r/AskReddit. Redditors who grew up with strict parents. What was the craziest rule or punishment you had to deal with? When I was about 13 years old, my dad told me to clean my room. I had put it off for a good couple of days. It wasn't terrible. Just some clothes on the floor and random drawings strewn around. Definitely no old food. One day I came home to my entire room completely destroyed. Everything has been pulled out of the closets and the drawers and thrown in the middle of the floor. Even my mattress was laying on top of it. My bed was sideways. I ended up crying for hours. My mom helped me put everything back together. That was probably the most meaningful thing she did for me cause she knew my dad went too far. Later that night I went to bed and there was 3 empty Coke bottles in my pillowcase. Edit. He had saved the Coke bottles from finding them hidden away in my room and put them there after it was already clean. Edit 2. My mother's stance on this was the strangest part. This sort of bullshit had happened to her in her childhood, so she wanted to comfort me and help me clean up but later told me she 100% felt like I deserved what I got. My parents were very much good cop bad cop, and unpredictably either one was comforting me through a ridiculously excessive punishment or ratting me out to the other, whereas 90% of the other time they didn't give a shit about what I was up to. Zero consistency. My brother and I used to get into fights a lot. Our mother had broken us up several times and it just got to where she couldn't handle us, but we were terrified of our father. He was a coal miner and all it would take was him taking his belt off and snapping it at us for us to straighten up. Well, my mother got tired of waiting for my dad to get home to make the punishment, so she just started shaving our heads bald. It was actually pretty smart BC. We would be so embarrassed by it. BC kids at school would make fun of us. This worked for several years until really short haircuts came back into style. Then it was back to dad terrifying us. When he would work second shift and got off around 10 to 11 he would come home and I can remember crying in bed scared of what he would say or do. Most times he would just open the door and say, "Shut up or I'll come in there," and give you a reason to cry. Or if I come in there I'm going to knock your teeth down your throat. You would think that he beat us, but the man never lay a hand on us. But he damn sure did terrify the living shit out of us. I would have the mental image of his fist actually knocking my teeth out and me swallowing them. As for the haircuts, I wear my hair long to this day and I'm 40. I hate having short hair, just doesn't feel like me. My mom wasn't so much strict as she was abusive and psycho. She started beating my ass with a thick wooden stick wrapped in duct tape at a young age. One time I called her dude and she beat the shit out of me. Once, after getting off the phone with my boyfriend, who had just broken up with me, and I was crying, I said none of your business to her. When she asked what the hell was wrong, she came running at me, put her hands around my throat, and started choking me, and knocked the chair I was in backwards, so she was on top of me. She continued to choke me and spit in my face. I was 12. Maybe I shouldn't have talked to her that way, but I think her reaction was a bit strong. One time, a few days before Christmas, she got pissed at my sister and me, threw the decorated Christmas tree down, and locked us out of the house. We were stuck outside for a few hours. She emptied a bottle recipe depression meds and then went for a drive. My sister and I freaked out and called the cops. She was just fucking with us and didn't take the drugs. Shit like this was my life. Until I was 17, and she threw a half-full Pepsi bottle at my head and then started hitting me in front of friends. I was fucking done. I told my friends to get out because how embarrassing is it to have your mother beat on you in front of them? And then after she punched me a few times, I took 2 swings at her, both of them landing on her jaw. She stopped then and never hit me again. I'm 36 now, and I couldn't be happier that I live a state away from her. I find myself getting pissed at my son and there is definitely a little nagging inside me that could almost let the chain of abuse go on, but I just draw from all the times my mom was crazy and how it made me feel as a kid and I just can't let myself be that way. She definitely did some damage to me. The word disgusting was banned and could have been considered just as bad as saying fuck. We weren't allowed to close doors unless we were in the bathroom. We weren't allowed to watch Cartoon Network because it was garbage. They actually put a parental lock on Cartoon Network. The worst punishment was one time they decided that we were such bad kids, my sister was like 14, I was 12ish, that they took everything we owned and bagged it up into garbage bags and made us carry them out to a burn pile, and they burnt everything we owned, all of my childhood memorabilia, pictures, clothes, diaries, everything, burnt it all fucked up when it was done burning. The next day or so later, my sister and I looked through the ashes and all that was left were 2 silver rings of hers that we cleaned off and kept. Crazy shit. No talking at the dinner table other than the occasional "do you want some more of" or "please pass the." We could not talk about anything at all. No small/idle chat was allowed. First time you did it, you got yelled at. Second time was a whooping and then sent to your room until the next day without the rest of your meal. I make it a point now with my kids to chat up a storm each and every meal. Edit. After viewing the replies and reading various PMs, I'll answer what I can. It was my dad's rule to not talk at the table. I think this was because he grew up in a very large farming family, 11 boys, 3 girls and 2 adults. Having to feed a family that size 3 meals a day was likely very time consuming, and with this being a farm there was work to do, so the faster the gang got done eating, the more work could be done. This was back in the late 40s early 50s era. I believe it was a carryover from that. He did loosen up later when he got to be 50 plus, and 2 out of the 3 of us kids were 20 plus. Meal times for my family are hugely social times, especially dinner/supper, as that's when we aren't pressed for time. We talk about whatever comes to mind. We laugh, joke and just talk, and even have the occasional food tossing at one another. I rarely limit discussions unless it's obvious that my kids are not eating. Usually a gentle reminder to have a bite or 2 gets the desired result. After we eat, each person then takes their dishes to the sink, and then we usually all flop on the couch to continue any bits of conversation we think weren't covered. Working shift work though does put a damper on it sometimes. Not that crazy, just something that's stuck with me, since I generally consider my parents to be good/caring parents, mainly just overprotective. But when I was 15, I got really depressed and kinda shut down academically and socially. My parents didn't know what to do with me. At one point, they ran out of ways to ground me, and my life was consequently made up of just going to school and coming home and lying motionless in bed, staring at the wall or sleeping. But my grades still hadn't improved, so they thought denying me of privacy/solitude by taking away my bedroom door would persuade me to get my grades up. Spoiler alert, it didn't, lol. Edit. I feel like I should address the sentiment in some of the responses that my parents weren't good at parenting. They really are good parents, and we have a much better relationship now. I'm 20 and in college in another state. Before this, they tried for months to figure out what was going on with me and or how to fix it with more compassionate and pretty typical methods. They really did want to help me get back on track. But my depression manifested primarily as a sullen silence and a passive refusal to do homework, study, do chores, etc. I think the combination of my attitude, refusal to engage, and an oppositional defiant disorder diagnosis from a therapist, who I still believe was biased in favor of my parents in this conflict, considering how she spoke to me and the fact that she brought up her relationship with her kids a few times during our meetings, led them to believe that I just hated them and wanted to hurt them emotionally. I mainly just wanted to be left alone for the most part. We've moved past that year, as it was hard on all of us, and I view this incident primarily as a mistake made during a difficult time by otherwise very loving parents. As the eldest son of a Southern Baptist preacher, I was held to some high standards. Being seen and not heard, and that my every action was a reflection of my father as a leader to his congregation. I found music to be great outlet, but of course any non-Christian music was not allowed, and immediately destroyed upon discovery. Spare the rod, spoil the child was a mantra ingrained in my daily life. Once I was into my teens and spankings with stretched out coat hangers was no longer enough to be considered punishment due to the lack of tears, my father moved on to shaving my head. Nothing like the constant reminder of how unworthy one is once their physical source of personal identity is forcibly removed. Oh. One I can answer. My mother is an honest-to-God narcissist. I graduated from high school early at 16 and didn't go to college immediately, so I worked a part-time job while all my friends went to school. Anyways, when all my friends graduated high school, we celebrated by going to the movies. My friend's mom dropped us off, and another friend's father was going to be picking us up. My mom was very upset at me going to the movies anyways, since it wasn't going to be over until after 9 PM, by bedtime at the time. Anyways, finally she lets me go on the condition that friend's dad gets me home by 10 PM. My friend's father ran into late night construction on the way home with me and several other friends in the van, and the closer it got to 10 PM the more I started freaking out, telling everyone I was going to be in huge trouble if I didn't get home like right now. My friend's father assured me he would speak to my mom and all would be fine. I was the first BB dropped off because I was panicking so severely. The moment the van pulls into the driveway, my mom comes barreling out of the house telling me she was going to kick my ass for being late and keeping her up. My friend's dad tries to calm her down and separate her from hitting me. That is when she realizes I'm chewing gum. Now my mother hated gum. Said the only reason you would ever chew gum was to hide something. So naturally she makes the assumption that I was late / chewing gum because I was busy sucking my friend's dad's dick. Yup. That was the only explanation in her mind. She grounded me for 12 weeks. An entire summer. I wasn't allowed to have a phone, cell phone, TV or books the entire summer. Every morning my mom would take the cable box, home phone handset, and keyboard to make sure I couldn't do anything. Needless to say, my friends never invited me anywhere again in fear that my mom would call the cops and accuse me of sucking their dad's dick. She also used to report my car stolen if I didn't call her back when I was in college. My mom was raised in a very strict and abusive environment. When my sister and I became teenagers, she was struggling with mental health issues and also never had a good example of what level-headed parenting looked like. It doesn't excuse some of the things she did, but I'm more understanding now that I'm older. Anyway, craziest most out of hand moment. My sister and I are 16 months apart in age and had a lot of the same friends in high school. When I was 14 and she was 15, our curfew was 9, but we got a summertime curfew of 10. This was before everyone had a cell phone. Our friend was watching the time, but we got caught up in our night games. We were literally playing hide and seek that we lost track of time and realized at 5 after 10 we were late and managed to get home by 10 after. My mom was furious, made us sit down at the kitchen table for a 30-minute lecture during which she slammed a utensil so hard on a plate in front of my sister that glass shards flew in her face. My sister got up and left the room at that point, but when I tried to do the same, my mom put me in a headlock like freaking WWE style and I punched her in the back to get her to let go. My sister and I were both grounded for something like 2 weeks, and I got an extra week for hurting my mom. The most ridiculous punishment? My sister at age 16 picked up smoking cigarettes. She'd been at it for a week. I told her that it was her own head, and that it wasn't worth it, and she should stop. But she kept on. Whatever, not my problem. She, like an idiot, pressed her luck and brought cigarettes into the house, where my mom found them in her room. Our mom would go through our stuff constantly, literally had to hide any CD with profanity or things like permanent markers that we could get high off of. They separated us and played good cop, bad cop. My sister, again, the idiot, totally bought it when my mom told her I'd blabbed about everything and they knew the truth. I was in the other room denying any knowledge or involvement. Anyway, this happened a week before summer vacation. My sister was grounded for the entire summer vacation. 2 months, no friends, no going out, 10 minutes of phone time a day, no electronics, no internet, no pool, no movie theater, nothing. My punishment? The exact same fucking thing. For not coming to my parents and telling on my sister. My parents also decided to sand and paint the baseboards that summer and forced us to do it all. That summer was the fucking worst. I spent a large portion of my teen years being grounded for minor things or for not being the sister spy. It sucked, especially considering I got decent, if not great grades, never drank, smoked, tried drugs, had sex, skipped class, or otherwise got into any kind of trouble. I'm almost 30 and about to have my second kid, and I'm still a little salty about it. My parents tried so hard to keep us from experiencing normal teenage stuff that both me and my sister made some really poor choices once we had the tiniest amount of freedom. No TV. Not as a punishment. Just no TV, ever. Because apparently it lets the devil in. The second I, as the last kid, moved out, they started watching TV all the time. Edit. Wow, I'm astonished at the interest this post has received. I'm not surprised that no one guessed correctly. I will gladly sate everyone's curiosity. My parents were a part of a Christian religious offshoot named The Move or The Move of God. It was founded by a man named Same Fife and is continued today by a man named Buddy Cobb. These are all facts which can be googled. I'm not breaking any Reddit rules by putting this out here. Some things the Move believed in that we had to endure as kids. Women had to wear dresses, no TV/video games, forced participation in religious ceremonies, little to no contact with the outside world. All my friends were Movites, exorcisms. The school I went to was part of the Move group too. There was no escape. Wow, okay, just typing this out is kinda bringing me back to that place. I gotta stop now and take a break. When I was 13, no dating until uni. When I was 18, no dating until I finish uni. When I'm 20 and about to graduate, no dating unless it's someone I choose for you. WTF. Edit. Wow. I didn't expect this many upvotes as I posted quite late. I usually just browse. Context. When I was 12 over 13, this girl had a crush on me and I had no idea until someone told me, so I asked my parents what I should do. You know, I'm young, I didn't know what to do, and they forbid me from dating. Of course, the strictest parents create the most rebellious children. I've dated a few times during high school and the last relationship in high school had an adverse effect on my academics. Broke up on the morning before an exit exam. In uni, I met my current girlfriend, and under the assumption I was allowed to date in uni, I thought it was a good idea to introduce her to my parents. Oh boy, that was a bad mistake. I got massive backlash saying that it was a bad idea, jeopardizing my studies for a silly relationship. 3 years later, she graduates, defers her postgraduate study for a year and travels the world whilst still maintaining the relationship's strength. I have a literal book worth of stories of the abuse I survived through, but one time Dr. Phil's show told my mother that having a bed was a luxury for kids, so she immediately took mine away. I slept on a cold wood floor until I escaped that hellhole and cut off all contact. My dorm in college was the first real bed I'd slept in for 10 years. I didn't own a bed when I moved into my first apartment after college, so I was back on the wood floor. I'd moved in with the clothes on my back, my cat and her stuff, and my laptop, which I used to make money by transcribing at night while I worked for 7 an hour 12 hours a week at a deli. It was the only place that would hire me since I didn't have access to my own car. I cried myself to sleep every night on that wood floor. It was a reminder of how much I'd failed, leaving myself back in that position. My roommate must have heard me crying one night and figured it was back pain because they lent me an air mattress to sleep on. It was like I'd moved into a 4-star hotel. Eventually I saved up a spare $50 and bought a bed off Craigslist. Sketchy, but I hadn't owned my own bed in 16 years before that. I still have a bed and refuse to part with it because I don't want to end up on the floor again. I have many chronic back problems that I don't think will ever be fixed due to being forced to sleep on a floor starting at age 7. I take pain meds when I can and do yoga, but it does not help. Sometimes when I can't sleep in my normal bed, I find myself still defaulting to the floor. When I wake up I cry, because I'm worried I'll always be like this. Parents have no idea how much they can fuck up their kids. I got grounded from an end of year party. I was 11. For getting a B on a paper, even though I still got all A's. I was devastated. It was thrown by my best friend, and I was never allowed to do anything, and I had been looking forward to it all year. I had the perfect dress to wear because my aunts, via marriage, mother had taken me shopping and bought this cool dress that made me feel like Molly fucking Ringwald. I was never allowed to wear it before, and it had been in my closet since September. I was seriously having a Cinderella moment. Although I honestly related more to Jane Eyre, because I was adopted and a bookworm. The day of party I'm bawling. I'm a good kid. I try to be perfect every waking moment. Now I'm grounded from my best friend's party. The mom of my best friend knows how tough it is at home. I'm screamed at, belittled, hit all the time. This party was a fucking beacon. Arlene, the BFF mom, barges in my house. Tells me to get ready and get my stuff together because I'll be spending the night. My mom protests. How about I call CPS about the 50 fucking cats in your house? I go to the party and Arlene teaches me to be a badass. Edit I spoke with my friend via FB Messenger and she is passing along Reddit's love to Arlene. I had all the usual punishments. No video games for a week. No TV for X nights. No pocket money this week. Groundings, you name it, I probably had it at one point or another. One particular punishment tops the rest though, for creativity and cruelty. One day I was at a friend's place with my parents, and discovered that, if we opened his bedroom window all the way, we could squeeze out of it, and climb onto his roof. His bedroom was on the second floor of their house and they lived on top of a hill. So if we had fallen, we would have fallen probably 7 to 8 meters, then tumbled another 20 to 30 meters to the bottom of the hill. Anyway, both sets of parents walk outside at one point and hear us talking from the roof. They flip their lids and call us back inside. We scramble back into his bedroom and are sitting there terrified when our parents storm in. We get called down into the kitchen and are told to sit down at the kitchen table and await our punishment. My friend's dad opens up the pantry and starts pulling things out, things to make a sandwich. Then it hits us like a ton of bricks. Our punishment is to eat a sandwich made of the most ill-complementing, grotesque food combinations that he had at his disposal. The final product ended up being an unholy blend of Vegemite, oysters, anchovies, cheese, creamed corn, raw beef mince, and hot English mustard. I actually don't really recall what it tasted like, other than being awful. Looking back on it as an adult, I reckon it was just as much for their entertainment than our punishment, but damn if it wasn't creative. My stepdad's favorite thing to do was to wait till I got home from school, and then he would take my sister to get ice cream, or some other equally fun activity, and then after getting home, he would use a wooden spoon on me and explain to me why I didn't deserve ice cream. He would say stuff like, see how nice I'm getting your sister ice cream? And you couldn't even sweep properly. It never made any sense. I hadn't even swept that day. Sometimes he would buy me something like candy and tell me I could have it when we got home. Then he would take it away and do the wooden spoon thing again, saying something along the lines of, I was nice enough to get you candy and this is how you repay me, while pointing at a messy kitchen or something. Even though I had literally just got back from school and he made the kitchen messy, he got me so used to failing that I didn't realize he was manipulating me. My mother was bipolar, eventually killed herself when I was 20 on my sister's 17th birthday, and my stepfather and stepmother were both abusive assholes. I have tons and tons of stories, but I'll stick to one story here so as not to make it too long. I've worn glasses since I was like 7, so I had to get periodic vision tests. When I was 13 or 14, I got one with an automatic machine that determines your prescription. I'm not sure what happened, but the machine definitely fucked up. It said I was legally blind and I had to wear thick Coke bottle glasses. I got horrible headaches because it wasn't the right prescription. My mom was fine with giving me meds for my headaches, but she and my stepfather refused to believe me that the prescription was incorrect. My stepfather would ground me anytime he saw me without my glasses on. I kept taking them off when they weren't around because I couldn't see shit. At one point, I was grounded for 9 months straight for taking off my glasses. He would follow me around sometimes, sneaking so I didn't know he was there, just so he could bust me taking them off, which would also lead to spanking me really hard with a ping pong paddle. Did I mention they were ridiculously religious? Well, I'd had enough of the bullshit with the glasses, so when I went to Oral Roberts University for summer camp one year, I devised a plan. When the crazy healing retarded part of the service started where you can go up and people will pray your affliction away, I went up and had them pray for my eyes. I made sure my youth pastor and several kids in my group witnessed this. The next day I declared my eyes were healed and that I didn't need such strong glasses anymore. My mom and stepfather were very skeptical of this story of healing, so they took me back to the eye doctor. It's a fucking miracle. Her eyes are better. It's not perfect, but it's definitely way better than before. Praise Jeebus. They had me get up at church and testify 4 or 5 times over the next year so everyone could celebrate my miracle. I finally had the right prescription. My mom was overly involved in my personal life, including friends and relationships. If I used my phone too much throughout evenings, she would confiscate it and read through my texts. I also come from a very conservative Christian family from the Midwest. Had a girlfriend in high school who was half black and half Costa Rican, and that relationship started over the summer when I was 17 and a junior in high school. At the time I was paying for my own car, food, and clothes. I literally stayed at my parents' house, had a flip phone on their phone plan, and occasionally ate food there. I lost my virginity to the girl a few months into the relationship. My mom eventually got suspicious after about a year and a half and asked me one night, _salty_crab, have you had sex with her? Of course I said hell no. She then brought out a fucking Bible and asked me to say the same answer, but swearing with my hand on the Bible. I didn't want to let Jesus down and eventually cracked. She tried to cut off all ties to the girl by making it to where I could only drive my car to and from school, work, and other approved places. I saw her every day at school, with friends, etc. If I didn't agree to her rules I would get kicked out and would have nothing but the clothes on my back. My car's title was under my parents' name. This went on for months, which caused hellacious fights between both my mother and girlfriend at the time. It was literally the stupidest fucking thing in my life. I finally graduated and decided to get the fuck up out that bitch and enlisted in the Navy by making a pros and cons list one night. The girl and I eventually split up after some time, but we tried to make it work for as long as we could under the circumstances. Looking back on it now, I wish I would just moved the hell out, but I was too afraid at the time. Thank you so much for watching the whole video. Please leave a like and subscribe.